Welcome. I'm Tracy Smith, and this is Here Comes the Sun, a closer look at some of the people, places, and things we bring you every weekend on Sunday morning. I recently sat down with Scream Queen Jamie Lee Curtis, who credits her career to the star-making role Laurie Strode in the Halloween franchise.
To Jamie Lee Curtis, the Laurie Strode role was more than a part in a movie. She says it was a bridge to everything she ever wanted.
Every time I talk about it, I cry. Because of what it's given me.
What has it given you?
My entire life. My entire life is because of Laurie Strode. I don't know what would have happened. I know I would have never found any success. And that just, the fact that people cared about her so much, powerful to have that.
There's more from our chat coming up a little later in the show.
So have you always been comfortable in your own skin?
No. It's called adolescence. No, my God, no, of course
not.
not.
But if you look at you on camera, you always have looked comfortable in your own skin, to the outsider.
Okay, that's just a lie, because I'm human, and therefore I'm in recovery, as you know, for a long time. And we have a phrase, compare and despair. If you compare yourself to someone else, you will end in despair. And that has plagued me my whole life, of course, because I will look at other people and think, wow, whatever. It's a deadly game. So, of course not. I had a horrible adolescence.
Then Conor Knighton introduces us to a club for Vermont enthusiasts with just one rule.
I've heard it said that we are a lawless organization, right? That kind of the only rule is that you have to love Vermont and want to explore it.
Mike Leonard is on the board of the 251 Club, which has maintained its name even though Vermont now technically has 252 towns. Like he said, the rules are loose. When he was 20, he hit the towns on a road trip with two of his pals.
And so I took it on as a challenge to really explore what it does mean to be a Vermonter.
That's all coming up right here on Here Comes the Sun. Jamie Lee Curtis was born into Hollywood royalty as the daughter of iconic actors Janet Leigh and Tony Curtis. But as she told me, she hopes her legacy will extend beyond her on-screen work to something simpler, kindness.
I love it here. I love it.
The Academy Museum in Los Angeles is home to the treasures of the film world, and that's where we met one of them.
This is my hometown, right here.
This is where you grew up, this is where you raised your kids.
I did. I mean, it's weird and beautiful.
And for Jamie Lee Curtis, weird and beautiful might just be the words to describe her life. Yes, she's known for a good jump scare. But in more than 40 years in the business, she's also been the one who could hold our attention.
Come on, baby.
And make us hold our breath. And her best work, she says, comes in those moments when she can just let loose.
When I'm free, I'm fantastic. It's a weird job, but when I can be free, I am unstoppable in everything. It's just who I am.
And when did you feel the freest?
Work-wise? Mm-hmm. I mean, Deirdre, I'm flying.
And she really does fly. In this year's Everything Everywhere All at Once, her character, Deirdre Beardra, is an airborne assailant. And in an alternate universe, she's an even scarier villain, an IRS auditor.
Now you may only see a pile of boring forms and numbers, but I see a story with nothing but a stack of receipts. I can trace the ups and downs of your lives, and it does not look good. It does not look good.
I know women like Deirdre Beardra. I think we all do. We all have had so many disappointments, so many opportunities that then break your heart. And I think that Deirdre's heart has just been broken. I know her, and I love her.
Mrs. Wang.
Hello.
critics loved her too. Oscar talk is already in the air. It's the logical result of hard work, talent, and maybe good genes. Her mother, Janet Leigh, famously scared us out of the shower, but she was also someone who could hold her own in a scene with Frank Sinatra.
You know what I was doing when you so cleverly had the police call me? Don't bother trying to guess. You're too tired.
And her dad, Tony Curtis, was, well, a legend of his own.
You know, it's amazing we never ran into each other before. I'm sure I would have remembered anybody as attractive as you are.
Jamie Lee was the second of their 2 daughters.
You've called yourself the save the marriage baby.
Yeah, totally. Sure.
That didn't save the marriage?
Well, I mean, my parents divorced when I was 3. It was horrible, 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 horrible. I was also raised by my mom, who came from nothing and treated this industry like with big wide eyes. I don't have big wide eyes about it. I understand the industry, but I have the same gratitude for it.
Are you in any way like your dad?
Oh, sure. He would love to walk into a big room. Hello, everyone. Hello, it's Tony. Hello. And he would, you know, he loved it. He loved the performance of Tony Curtis. And I'm caught in the middle.
And like both of her parents, Jamie Lee Curtis went on to be a star. But it seems she was luckier in love than they were.
Does that mean it's louder? Is it any louder?
Well, it's one louder, isn't it?
She says she fell in love with actor-director Christopher Guest after seeing his photo in a magazine in 1984.
I was with my friend Deborah Hill, and I said to Deborah, I'm going to marry that guy. And she said, who? I said, that one right there. I'm going to marry him.
Long story short, it actually happened later that year. She says he can drop her to the floor with laughter, and so can her co-stars. Not always a good thing on a movie set.
I read somewhere that you have a trick. How do you keep a straight face?
I've stepped on a thumbtack. I put it in my shoe. And if I'm standing there, I'll just push my heel down on it. Because I have to. You have to distract your brain.
It worked.
Oh, it works beautifully.
Still, she's best known for a serious role. Laurie Strode of the Halloween series.
I killed him.
You can't kill the boogeyman.
She was 19 when she was first cast in John Carpenter's horror classic. And this Halloween Ends is, reportedly, her final bow. To Jamie Lee Curtis, the Laurie Strode role was more than a part in a movie. She says it was a bridge to everything she ever wanted.
Every time I talk about it, I cry. Because of what it's given me.
What has it given you?
My entire life. My entire life is because of Laurie Strode. I don't know what would have happened. I know I would have never found any success. And that just, the fact that people cared about her so much, powerful to have that. Incredible respect I have for it. And feel very honored by it and proud. I've spent a little bit of time in one of these scary closets.
Her home closet is now more about merchandise than monsters. She runs an online business called My Hand in Yours, selling everything from bronze sculptures of clasping hands to hats to hand sanitizer, with every cent going to benefit Children's Hospital Los Angeles.
And my little company has almost raised $1 million in 2 years.
At this point in her life, so much of it is about giving back. She bought the naming rights to one of the Academy Museum's structural pillars and dedicated it to a couple of pillars of the industry, her parents.
There she is. She's right there. But see, what I like is, see, they just left it totally rough-hewn. But it's cool.
And maybe it's no surprise that Jamie Lee Curtis, who's faced down death over and over in the movies, has a pretty clear idea of what she'd like to leave behind.
When you think about what your own legacy will be, what do you think?
I hope my legacy will be kindness, that I get it, that life is hard, and I really feel like I'm aware that life is really hard for people. Maybe humor, a little humor would be good. Don't take it so serious, you know, just like lighten it up a bit. But kindness, at the end of the day, I hope it's kindness.
More exclusive excerpts from our conversation coming up a little later in the show. But up next, nature lovers in an autumn state of mind. It's a club for serious Vermont fans, determined to explore every town in the Green Mountain State. Here's Conor Knighton.
Vermont is known as the Green Mountain State. But come autumn, its mountain slopes are anything but green. As the leaves turn red and yellow and orange, picturesque towns turn into tourist hotspots.
Number 53, Waterbury, Vermont.
All right.
Loretta Cruz and Aaron Agnew aren't your typical leaf peepers. They've come to the town of Waterbury on their honeymoon. Sort of. When these Vermonters got married back in 2020, the pandemic forced them to cancel the trip they'd originally planned and stay closer to home instead.
We had to think about, well, what are we going to do for a honeymoon? So
go to every town in Vermont was the answer?
Every town in Vermont, that's right. And that extends the honeymoon. It's more than just one trip, too.
At this rate, the honeymoon period could last for well over a decade. They've been taking trips whenever they can get away, taking tips from the many members of the 251 Club.
Our first town was Brookfield. We wanted to see the floating bridge.
We'll be in Randolph.
The 251 Club is a group dedicated to exploring all of Vermont's towns and cities.
Every town that has a brewery, we want to go to.
At their annual meeting, they gather together to talk about their journeys.
are we doing it together? Are there rules? Tim is very competitive, so he feels there should be rules.
It's got to be rules.
Lynn and I.
But there aren't any rules.
I've heard it said that we are a lawless organization, right? That kind of the only rule is that you have to love Vermont and want to explore it.
Mike Leonard is on the board of the 251 Club, which has maintained its name even though Vermont now technically has 252 towns. Like he said, the rules are loose. When he was 20, he hit the towns on a road trip with two of his pals.
And so I took it on as a challenge to really explore what it does mean to be a Vermonter.
Some of the towns, only had 5 or 6 people in them.
Esther Farnsworth didn't start her quest until she was 90.
There are a lot of places in Vermont that I haven't seen. So I just decided I'd go. And
now 93, Farnsworth made it through the list in 2.5 years.
And I know the best places in Vermont to get ice cream. Ben & Jerry's isn't the only one, there are some others too.
The 251 Club was first proposed in a 1954 issue of Vermont Life magazine. Poet Arthur Peach wrote that Vermont, from the beginning, has been a state of towns, and in them only can the real Vermont be found and seen. In the town of Thetford, you can see the Vermontosaurus. In the town of Glover, you'll find the unattended Museum of Everyday Life, devoted to ordinary objects. Just turn the lights off when you leave. In a single afternoon, you can travel from Peru to Jamaica to Athens. But as every traveler knows, it's not always about the destination.
Driving around, talking, it's just been, it's definitely been really good, father-daughter bonding time, especially, during the pandemic.
Whenever you complete your quest, there's no grand prize. The club doesn't make you prove anything. But
what happens is your heart opens up when you finish, because you get to see how much commitment is in each of those tiny little towns that are out-of-the-way places, but people love them.
That's Vermont's Congressman Peter Welch, a proud 251er. That deep sense of pride and sense of place is perhaps best summed up in the Vermont State song.
These green hills and
which
silver
Esther Farnsworth
mountains
insisted I could
are
not
my
leave the state
home.
without
They
hearing.
belong to me. They say home is where the heart is. These green mountains are my home.
I love that. That's a great set of it.
My mother really believed in the old school way of promoting a movie. You suit up and you show up. I suit up and show up.
We'll have more from my chat with Jamie Lee Curtis coming up next. Stay with us. Welcome back. As promised, here's more with Jamie Lee Curtis.
What do you think you learned about how to navigate Hollywood and your career from looking at your parents' careers?
Well, I'm a good girl, so I say yes. My mother was like so open and so grateful for this opportunity in her life. And that is a professionalism that she instilled in me very, very young that I carry into every job I do. I was also raised by a businessman. Her husband was a businessman. And to this day, anytime I pick up the phone, it happened yesterday, and I was calling to get air conditioning put in this house because we don't have air conditioning. It got a little hot last week. And the woman answered the phone at Brody Pennell Heating, and the first word I say is, "Hi, it's Jamie Curtis. Who am I speaking to?" Because I was raised by a businessman who built a business calling people. He was a stockbroker who created this business with telephone books and phones. "Hi, this is Robert Brandt from Robert Brandt and Company. Who am I speaking to?" "Oh, hi, Eileen. How are you today?" "Yes, good. I'm in California. Where are you? You're in Boston. How's the weather?" Whatever. And then he'd talk to her, and then he'd make his pitch. That's who I am. I try to introduce myself to everybody on a set. I like people to wear name tags so that everybody can know each other. So I'm not like the special one and they're not. Like, that's important to me. Those are all from my mother. My mother really believed in the old school way of promoting a movie. Old school. You suit up and you show up. I suit up and show up. And maybe to a fault, or maybe I'm just a weapon of mass promotion. Maybe I'm amazing. Like, seriously, maybe that's, like, I know that that is an asset. I know it. Because a modern world person is being told, "Oh, you don't have to do any of that. Oh, don't do that. Oh, don't Instagram. Oh, don't do that. Oh, no, separate yourself. Be an artist." I'm like, really? It's called show business. It's a business. You got to feed the business part of it.
You've talked openly about your sobriety in the hopes that it'll help other people.
Well,
have you heard from people?
Oh, of course. Oh, of course. Of course.
Like what? What's the most?
Just, you know what? That's the world where there's a phrase in recovery which we use, which is, "You're only as sick as your secrets." And when you release a secret and it doesn't have the power over you anymore, that freedom for people is really profound. And it is a sisterhood, a brotherhood, a communityhood with any recovering person. I have recovering people come up to me all the time talking about the power of recovery in their life. And of course, I've had lovely people make commentary, and I'm a big cheerleader, so I also am very involved in recovery.
You set up recovery meetings on sets.
Well, I mean, you have to, because when I was newly sober, I haven't as much in my latter sobriety, because I have a really strong program and a really strong group of people who I communicate with on the daily. So that isn't the issue. But when I was newly sober and working, I did create a safe space meeting in my mobile home, in my trailer at work, which turned out to be a wonderful motley crew of people. But it's the nature of recovery.
So have you always been comfortable in your own skin?
No. it's called adolescence. No, my God, no, of course
but
not.
if you look at you on camera, you always have looked comfortable in your own skin to the outsider.
Okay, that's just a lie because I'm human, and therefore I'm in recovery, as you know, for a long time. And we have a phrase, compare and despair. If you compare yourself to someone else, you will end in despair. And that has plagued me my whole life, of course, because I will look at other people and think, wow, whatever. It's a deadly game. So, of course not. I had a horrible adolescence.
Just like all of us did?
There's not a person well, and unfortunately, the people that sailed through their adolescence and were high achievers in high school and college. I have so many friends now with kids in college and in high school. And you know, all those parents, all these helicopter parents that we've all become, these obsessed parents with our children, you know, they want them to have the greatest experience and to get everything they want and to achieve everything that, you know what I mean, whatever. And I'm like, oh, I hope they don't. I hope they don't peak in high school. I hope they don't. I hope they peak when they're 60. I hope they wait, you know, because we want that for our kids. We want that for people.
I'm Tracy Smith. Thanks for joining us. We'll see you here next time on Here Comes the Sun.